Thank you for being part of our Town Story Gathering event. Thank you for trusting us with your story today. You should have signed a consent form. Do you have any questions before we get started?
Nope.
All right. All right. So the questions are going to be, what makes your neighborhood feel like a neighborhood to you? I'm sorry. What makes it feel like home?
What makes a neighborhood feel like home?
Yeah. What makes your neighborhood specifically feel like home?
Word.
If you were blindfolded and turned around, how would you find your way back home? Would you use smell, landmarks, and what would you hear on your way back home? The second question is, that was only the first. If you moved here from another place, what or who did you bring with you? Another part of it is, what or who did you have to leave behind? And the third and last question is, what are your family / cultural rituals, and how are these similar or different?
And are you going to ask them again while we're talking? Okay, great.
I just want to try to give you a little prelim.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm ready whenever you guys are.
All right, so here we go. So was Des doing some sort of introduction, like welcome today, thank you for participating, or did she just jump in?
I don't know, but that sounds good.
All right, so I'll just read off the first line again. So thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I should let you know when I'm about to start.
No, I'm recording, so go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for being part of Your Town Story today. Thank you for trusting us with your stories. I'm gonna ask you 3 questions having to do with where you're from and how you feel about it, and just feel free to answer accordingly. All right, what makes your neighborhood feel like home?
What makes my neighborhood feel like home are the people who recognize me when I'm there. So when I walk outside, I'm pretty distinctive in my neighborhood. I'm a chocolate baby, I have long locks, I usually wear my weights around, I'm skateboarding, playing basketball, doing stuff that's not usual to everyone, and so it feels like home when people are like, hey, Mobes, or what's up, Mobile, or, you know, catching me when I'm passing by. Also, the area itself is just like green. I live in a very, like there's a lot of parks nearby, a lot of walking space, a lot of people who are like constantly moving. And so it feels like home to see so many familiar faces on a regular basis. Like I have a regular jogger who I know what time she's gonna pass by in the morning. I have a guy who passed by wearing the same ankle weights every day. And so it feels like home when I know that there's familiarity. Yeah, I think those are the biggest pieces.
Nice, thank you.
For sure.
Thank you for that. All right, so I have a, not necessarily a trick question, but this is gonna take a little bit of thought. Or maybe not, maybe this is something you've actually done before. If you were blindfolded and turned around, how would you find your way back home? Would you use smell, landmarks, and what would you hear?
Yeah, so if I was blindfolded and had to get home, it depends on where from and what I would do to get there, but I think the sounds are a big part. I know there's a T-bus, the 51 bus stops right outside my apartment, and I know what that sounds like when it rolls up. There's no other vehicle that really sounds like it. There's like garbage trucks and like other big trucks that come by, but the T sounds like the T. And it comes like an infrequent ratio in my area, so I would listen for that bus and know, okay, that's the 51, I know it's going on this route, I know like where it's coming from, where it's going to. There's also like a gas station that you can usually smell the auto work coming from it next door to my apartment. And so to get to that, I don't know how I would get there, but I know when I get to that, I'm close to home. Because it smells and sounds like people working, it sounds like men laughing and having a good time together. It sounds like tools falling on the ground sometimes, and I know, all right, people are over there working, I'm near home. I don't know, I would probably ask people honestly, like what is around them, for folks who could see what was around, for landmark cues about what's nearby. I live near a couple of golf courses, for example, a couple of convenience stores that are very specific, and I would ask folks, you know, hey boss, I can't really see where I'm going, but if you could tell me where Putterham Market or X, Y, and Z spot is, I can like kind of get there eventually. So yeah, I think that would be the most things that I rely on.
Nice, that sounds like something you have done before.
I have not, but
So
I
that
give
was
a lot of thought to
confidence.
like, you know, what's in my area, so I pay attention.
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Oh yeah.
All right, so second question. If you moved here from another place, what or who did you bring with you?
Yeah, so I did move here from another place. I moved from Pritchard, Alabama, and it was a very big difference in Pritchard, Alabama to Massachusetts. Were a few places before that, but I left behind like a lot of norms that were familiar to me. So where I'm from, we celebrate Juneteenth as a community, and it's a massive celebration. Like the street shut down. It's like a massive block party for like several blocks, with cultural dances and food and just community art, just people. The vibes are just huge. And when I moved here, there wasn't such celebrations that I knew of, at least in my area. And I'm sure they happened, but I didn't know anybody. I left everyone home when I moved to this area. So I didn't move with any people that I knew, or any like expectation of like what the area was going to be like. I just kind of came cold turkey with what are we going to find, and here we are. So yeah, I think I left behind a lot of familiarity. So I grew up where I grew up. I was there for the first 17 years of my life. Without moving, the community knew me. Everyone knew me as Lil Burrell, and they would wave when I passed by, or bring me my favorite food, or just like recognize things about me that you only know from having spent years and years around someone. So I left all of that behind to come to Boston for a change, really.
Nice, nice. Well, I hope it hasn't disappointed you in any way.
It has not yet.
All right, so I have a second part to that same question. What or who did you leave behind?
Who I left behind? I left all of my family, and then eventually I brought one with me because I missed him too much. So he's like my little brother, and I moved him up here in 2013, several years after I came up here. Because I did leave him behind, but I was like, nah, bro, I need somebody up here with me, so you got to come too. So I left almost all of my family when I left. I left a lot of I don't know how to put it, but just like like a lot of connections. Like I was a part of my church in a big way. So I was in the choir, I was on the praise team, I did conferences with the church, we traveled together as a group. So that whole community was a like subset of my community, and I left all of that behind as well. I left like my alumni from my schools. I went to a small boarding school, and it was very tiny. We had a graduating class of 74 people.
Nice.
Yeah, and so we all knew each other, and like we're really connected, and all of those people were left behind. But it was, I think, worth it for sure to come up and learn new things as well. So,
with all those connections, aside from your brother, have you had a lot of visits from back home or visitors from back home?
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually this past year, my aunt and my cousin came up. So my cousin's mom, who I moved up here, came up with one of our close cousins.
Yep.
And I wouldn't say it's frequent that they come visit us, but they do start to feel bad when we've gone home to see them like multiple times in a year and they haven't been for a couple of years. So they visited us in 2018, and then the pandemic happened and they didn't come back until 2022. And between then, we haven't had any other family come up. But before then, my dad came once, and I've been giving my sisters grief about not coming to see me because I go visit them in Texas and Louisiana regularly. At least 4 times a year, I'm getting down south to see somebody. And so finally, my oldest sister and her family of 4 children and her husband are going to come visit me on spring break of their spring break of 2023. So
nice.
Some people are trying to get here more regularly.
Nice, I love it. All right, I have one last question for you, and it's a two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
What are your family's cultural rituals?
Yeah, so do you want to ask the second part too, or should I answer this first?
You should answer it first.
All right, my family's cultural rituals. That's a good question. So we were raised in the church, and so a big thing that we did was pray together. And so one thing that we did, I don't know if you would call that a cultural ritual, but we are Black folks from the South, and I know that the church is a big part of the Black South. So yeah, it is part of our cultural ritual. But yeah, we would oftentimes have family gatherings or meals around special occasions or holidays that were special, like nationally, but also just important to us locally. So for example, my grandfather turned 93 last year, and we did a big party for him the year before that. My father turned 70. We threw a big happy 70th birthday party. And so I guess a norm is really celebrating and validating the people that are part of our community. And that's like the biggest piece. And then like we celebrate, you know, your kind of typical holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving and all that, but the really special things are the ones that are targeted for like our family specific.
Nice, I love it. All right, so the second part of the question is, how are these similar or different?
Different from where I am now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, super poor, like mostly working class or in poverty folks and families that live below the poverty line. And currently I live in Chestnut Hill, which is the exact opposite of that. And I think what's different is that there's not as much felt community celebration, at least for me, around the events that are important. So I mentioned Juneteenth a couple of times. I don't know of any Juneteenth celebrations that happen in Chestnut Hill. I don't know of any celebrations that are geared towards like black and brown folks in general in Chestnut Hill. But I have seen things like Greek Fest and like other activities that are geared towards other cultural groups that I presume are like more represented in the area. So it feels like a big missing piece to have like that kind of blackness and brownness out of my everyday purview. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
All right. So now this is not one of the official questions, but out of curiosity, with these pieces that you are not finding here that you're used to and comfortable and love back home, would you ever consider leaving this city to go elsewhere, either back home or somewhere else that is a little more similar to what you're used to?
That's a good question. Yes, and so I have always considered that I'm going to be moving. I don't ever imagine myself like staying somewhere permanently. So I imagine that I've been in Boston area for over a decade now, like probably like 12 years at this point. But I intend to move to the West Coast at some point. I don't know if I will find that I get everything I need from it. I don't know if I can go back down south. Just the mentality is not in line with how I live my life and my values, and so I can't see myself living in Alabama again for the long term. Possibly where my sisters are in Texas or Louisiana to be closer to family, but probably not anywhere else down south unless there's like a specific pull to be there. Yeah.
Nice, good answers. Thank you very much.
For sure.
Thank you for all that. You actually gave me a lot more to think about.
For sure.
But I appreciate you.
Bet. Should I just leave this here?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I thought she was behind me the whole time.
She was most of it, but then she went into there about a minute ago.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I learned a lot.
For sure.
I learned a lot. Like, I don't feel like we talked about your younger brother at all at that time over at the program. I keep on blanking out on the name. Institute for Nonprofit.
Yep,
okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't talk about him. I don't know if I'm supposed to turn this off, but he's technically my cousin, but he grew up raised like brothers and sisters, and his blood sister died in 2013.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it was really hard for the whole family. It's really unexpected, and so he ended up, just being a little lost. So I brought him up here to work with us at a summer program up in New Hampshire.
Nice.
And he kind of fell in love with it, and I told him, yeah, man, it'd be nice to have some family up here still. So.
And he's navigating the city fine?
So he doesn't live here. He lives in Leominster.
I'm familiar-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like a 45 minute to an hour drive depending on traffic from my house.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really, he's a homebody, generally speaking, but he does like find what he wants. Like he did a summer basketball league, for example, and hangs out, with some coworkers on occasion, and he finds what he wants to do, but he really is like the biggest homebody I've ever met.
Okay.
So yeah, but he comes down to Boston on occasion, but I wouldn't say he's not a crowd person or a people person, and so when there's like a lot of people around, he's just like,
yeah, nah, I definitely can relate to that.
Yeah,
yes.
Can I take a picture of you? For sure.
Sure.
You guys want to stand?
Yeah.
To get a little closer, yeah. Purple background. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mobes.
Yeah, man.
Thank you very much.
For sure, boss. Be well.
Thank you for your time. Be well.
For sure. I'll see you.